Hi everyone, my name is Emmy and I'll be reading a little bit of the first chapter of Percy Jackson the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. It's a fantasy book and you can check it out on Sora if you want to finish reading it. Let's get going. Chapter 1. I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. Look, I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom or dad told you about your birth and try to lead a normal life. Being a half blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid reading this because you think it's fiction, great, read on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us, and once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too. And they'll be coming for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm 12 years old. Until a few months ago, I was a boarding student at Yancey Academy, a private school for troubled kids in upstate New York. Am I a troubled kid? Yeah, you could say that. I could start at any point in my short, miserable life to prove it, but things really started going bad last May when our sixth grade class took a field trip to Manhattan. 28 mental case kids and two teachers on a yellow school bus heading to the Metropolitan Museum of Art to look at ancient Greek and Roman stuff. I know, it sounds like torture. Most Yancey field trips were. But Mr. Bruner, our Latin teacher, was leading this trip, so I had hopes. Mr. Bruner was this middle-aged guy in a motorized wheelchair. He had thinning hair and a scruffy beard, and a frayed jacket which always smelled like coffee. You wouldn't think he'd be cool, but he told stories and jokes and let us play games in class. He also had this awesome collection of Roman armor and weapons, so he was the only teacher whose class didn't put me to sleep. I hoped the trip would be okay. At least I hoped that for once I wouldn't get in trouble. Boy, was I wrong. See, bad things happen to me on field trips. Like at my fifth grade school, when we went to the Saratoga battlefield, I had this accident with a Revolutionary War cannon. I wasn't aiming for the school bus, but of course I got expelled anyway. And before that, at my fourth grade school, when we took a behind the scenes tour of the Marine Shark Pool, I sort of hit the wrong lever on the catwalk and our class took an unplanned swim. And the time before that, well, you get the idea. This trip, I was determined to be good. All the way into the city, I put up with Nancy Bobofet, the freckly redhead kleptomaniac girl, hitting my best friend Grover in the back of the head with chunks of peanut butter and ketchup sandwich. Grover was an easy target. He was scrawny. He cried when he got frustrated. He must have been held back several grades because he was the only sixth grader with acne and the start of a wispy beard on his chin. On top of all that, he was crippled. He had a note excusing him from PE for the rest of his life because he had some kind of muscular disease in his legs. He walked funny, like every step hurt him, but don't let that fool you. You should have seen him run when it was enchilada day in the cafeteria. Anyway, Nancy Bobofet was throwing wads of sandwich that was stuck in his curly brown hair, and she knew I couldn't do anything back to get her because I was already on probation. The headmaster had threatened me with death by in school suspension if anything bad, embarrassing, or even mildly entertaining happened in the trip. I'm going to kill her, I mumbled. Grover tried to calm me down. It's okay. I like peanut butter. He dodged another piece of Nancy's lunch. That's it. I started to get up, but Grover pulled me back in my seat. You're already on probation, he reminded me. You'll know who'll get banned if anything happens. Looking back, I wish I'd decked Nancy Bobofet right then and there. In school suspension would have been nothing compared to the mess I was about to get myself into. Mr. Bruner led me to the museum tour. He rode up in He rode up in his wheelchair, guiding us through the big, echoey galleries, past marble statues and glass cases full of really old black and orangey pottery. It blew my mind that this stuff had survived for 2,000, 3,000 years. He gathered us around a 13-foot tall stone column with a big sphinx on the top, and started telling us how it was a grave marker stele for a girl about our age. He told us about the carvings on the sides. I was trying to listen to what he had to say, but it was kind of interesting. But everyone around me was talking, and every time I told them to shut up, the teacher's chaperone, Mrs. Dodds, would give me the evil eye. Mrs. Dodds was this little math teacher from Georgia who always wore a black leather jacket even though she was 50 years old. She looked mean enough to ride a Harley right into your locker. She had come to Yancey Academy halfway through the year when our last math teacher had a nervous breakdown. From her first day, Mrs. Dodds loved Nancy Bobofet and figured I was the devil spawn. She would point to her crooked finger at me and say, "Now, honey," real sweet, and I knew I was going to get after school detention for a month. One time she made me erase answers out of the old math workbooks until midnight. I told Grover I didn't think Mrs. Dodds was human. He looked at me real serious and said, "You're absolutely right." Mr. Bruner kept talking about Greek funeral art. Finally, Nancy Bobofit snickered something about a naked guy on the steel, and I turned around and said, "Will you shut up?" It came out louder than it meant to. The whole group laughed. Mr. Bruner stopped his story. "Mr. Jackson, do you have a comment?" My face was totally red. I said, "No, sir." Mr. Bruner pointed to one of the pictures on the steel. "Perhaps you'll tell us what this picture represents?" I looked at the carving and felt a flush of relief because I actually recognized it. "That's Kronos eating his kids, right?" "Yes," Mr. Bruner said, obviously not satisfied. "And he did this because—" Well, I racked my brain to remember. Kronos was the king god, and— "God?" Mr. Bruner asked. "Titan," I corrected myself. "And he didn't trust his kids who were the gods, so Kronos ate them, right? But his wife hid baby Zeus and gave Kronos a rock to eat instead. And later, when Zeus grew up, he tricked his dad Kronos into barfing up his brothers and sisters." "Ew," said one of the girls behind me. "And so there was this big fight between the gods and the Titans," I continued, "and the gods won." Some snickers from the group. Behind me, Nancy Beaufet mumbled to a friend, "Like we're going to use this in real life. Like it's going to say on application jobs. Please explain why Kronos ate his kids." "And why, Mr. Jackson?" Bruner said. "To paraphrase Miss Bobofet's excellent question, does this matter in real life?" "Busted," Grover muttered. "Shut up," Nancy hissed, her face even brighter than her hair. At least Nancy got packed too. Mr. Bruner was the only one who ever caught her saying anything wrong. He had radar ears. I thought about his question and shrugged. "I don't know, sir." "I see." Mr. Bruner looked disappointed. "We'll have credit to Mr. Jackson. Zeus did indeed feed Kronos a mixture of mustard and wine, which made him disgorge his other 5 children, who, of course, being immortal gods, had been living and growing up completely undigested in the Titan's stomach. The gods defeated their father, sliced him into pieces with his own scythe, and scattered his remains in Tartarus, the darkest part of the underworld. On that happy note, it's time for lunch. Mrs. Dodds, would you lead us back outside?" Hope you enjoyed that little part in the first chapter of Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. And I recommend you read it because I really enjoyed this series. Bye. Hope you enjoyed.